Hey, you came back for me to torture you a little bit more with episode 3 of Dr. Rob Pediatrics. Thank you again. Today's sponsor is The Scream. I think he sums up 2020 and the beginning of 2021 perfectly. Okay, question number 3. Of the 7 questions you need to ask at every teen visit. It's about academics, but I feel I must give a little bit of a pandemic caveat because since March 2020, school for many teens, especially the teens in public schools who had much more virtual learning, has been horrible. Most of us pediatricians, I think, saw this coming. There was a general overestimation of the risk of COVID-19 to kids and teens and a vast underestimation of the academic and especially the emotional risk to teens of not being in-person school. Teenagers are social animals. They need to be with other kids. Now, every family has their own bubble, and our party line was any decision they make was the right decision for them. And for some it was, but for many, if they had a choice and they decided to stay home, was not a great idea for their teens. Almost all teens do better with in-person school. Now, these days, I'm not as concerned about grades per se as much as their self-esteem, overcoming depression, social anxiety, and getting back to in-person school as soon as possible. But here's what I usually ask. Jason, how are your grades at school? You really can't ask teens just how you doing in school because they're going to say, okay, fine, whether they're failing or they're a straight A student. So you gotta ask for some details. Now, I really don't care if they're a straight A student or if they're a straight C student, but more if they're satisfied with their grades, if they have good study habits, and even if their grades are okay, do they feel like they are studying twice as hard as their friends? That can really get into issues of learning problems or especially attention issues. I ask if they ever study on the weekends. Good students in high school do sometimes study on the weekends, even if they don't have a test on Monday. It's not their God-given right to never crack a book on the weekends. Now, if the grades aren't that great, I specifically ask, is that because of poor test scores or if they're not getting their homeworks and assignments in? Because that's just giving the grade away. If they have academic struggles, I ask if they have friends at school, if they sit with somebody at lunch. You may uncover bullying, social isolation, even some mild spectrum issues. Always think about issues at home due to strife or even food insecurity. And of course, always ask about those sleep habits and where that cell phone is. Now, if there are academic issues, you may need to do a screen for ADHD like with a Vanderbilt, or even recommend formal psychoeducational evaluations. This can be tough to get through the school district and can be very expensive if done privately, and good luck getting insurance to pay for it. Sadly, our education system often works best for kids who are very bright and kids who have obvious challenges, and a lot of the kids in between get kind of lost. In my perfect world, every student would get a full psychoeducational evaluation in 5th or 6th grade to better define how they learn and help teachers to better teach to their strengths instead of just yearly standardized testing. But I'm not holding my breath. Now, with straight A students, I like to ask them to do a thought experiment and see what would happen if at the end of this semester they got a C final grade in a class. Now, usually these straight A students look at me kind of stricken, and then look at their mom, and then their mom gives me a nasty look, and I quickly jump in as appropriate. The next day after the C, the sun will come up and you're gonna go to college. I do get some unhappy looks when I talk about it's okay to get a non-A, but I want the parents to hear that and to keep some perspective about grades about their kids. Now, there's a lot of pressure on these straight A students, and many of these teens just want to be perfect, and it carries a lot of academic anxiety. That's not always a bad thing because being a little anxious makes you be on top of things. What about this test? What about this assignment? Except when that academic anxiety just can't get turned off in their heads. And these perfect straight A students also are much more likely to have disordered eating. Now, if the parents can afford college tuition and the teen really is not working that hard at school, but at the same time they tell me, yes, I want to go to college, I like to ask them, who's going to pay for college? And they always look at their mom or dad sitting on the other side of the room. I point out that parents don't legally have to pay for college at all. And when they turn 18 and they've graduated high school, mom can take their clothes, put it in a nice suitcase, put it on the porch and tell them, hey, good luck, goodbye, peace out, call us, we'll do Thanksgiving. Loved raising you. Now, it could sometimes be shocking to hear, but the point is that the kids are now kind of auditioning to their parents, say, hey, invest in me, I'm working hard, please invest in me for the future. And if they get better grades, they often get better financial aid, and they get into maybe better choices for college or vocational school. And then these kids can get that better car, they can get that future Tesla, they can have nice vacations, they can get a PS5, whatever floats their boat. Lastly, I always talk about reading. Teens who read on their own, whether it's comic books or graphic novels, magazines, articles that interest them, or even James Joyce, just do better in life and certainly on the college standardized tests. Now those SATs and ACTs, they're kind of stupid. They favor the wealthy because they can get tutors and they can take tests over and over and over. They're not as important as grades. And with this pandemic, the one silver lining is that they're becoming less important. More and more schools are not requiring, but they're still a thing and they still should be studied for when they're taken. I also stress that top students in middle school who never read often are not top students in high school. But if their parents keep reading to them since they were little, they have a huge leg up. So parents out there, read to your kids every single night. Okay, boys and girls, that's it for now. Get ready for question number 4. Good night,